Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Today I will talk a bit about my autism and my mental health problems in the past. And we've already shot this video and you might think like, whoa, she must know her script very well by now. But no, I'm having my laptop over there and I'm going to read off my script. You can treat this video like a podcast if you don't like the fact that I'm staring right beneath the camera, and I'll probably won't add any animation or stuff like that, and I'll put the time codes here so you know, like if you're only interested in the part when I talk about my autism, my Asperger, or you're interested in only hearing my mental health problem story. First I'll talk about my Asperger. It is something that I love to talk about because I sometimes feel like my Asperger is a superpower that comes with some negative sides as well. To start with, what is Asperger? It is the lightest form of autism. The person who has it is averagely to highly intelligent. It is genetically inheritable. There are different fields of intelligence, and to be autistic there must be a big difference in your communicative and presentative IQ. So I scored high on most IQ tests, but on the ones that included verbal interaction and some other tests, I scored pretty low. There is a big difference in information processing with autistic people. This results in a person who is very interested in only a few subjects, and habits are very important, because processing different information can be very difficult. They can also appear unworldly and can have a hard time separating real life with fantasy. People with Asperger can be very obsessive with hobbies and even people, but 10% of everyone on the planet has some form of autism, which is really a lot. But the autism spectrum is very broad as well. I only know about my autism for a year now, but it kind of made sense when I started thinking about my past. I have always been very obsessive and all or nothing. I used to have very weird situations with friends where I somehow screwed up, and people probably think I'm very strange. I've also heard I ask a lot of weird questions during school, but that's just because my brain processes in a different way. I don't know anything about general knowledge because I'm just not interested in it, and my brain filters out all the stuff that isn't important to me. That's also why a lot of people think I'm very dumb. I also don't understand sarcasm most of the time if it isn't overreacted, and I'm very bad with subtle communication, like please just tell me what's going on. I'm actually very happy I have a boyfriend now, because I'm the worst when it comes to guys. I used to fall in love with guys by just seeing them once, and then I became obsessed. Evert, my boyfriend, has ADHD, which complements Asperger very well. They are both on the autism spectrum, and I'm so thankful for him because he understands me all the time and he's just perfect for me. I'm also very naive, so he's like my manager for brain fog and he checks everything for me. Now, because this channel mainly goes about art, and to give some examples, I will talk about the positive and negative sides about being an artist with Asperger, but it could be compared with anything else. And of course, I'm talking about my experience. This could be different for anyone else. But basically my special autistic interest is design, art, illustration, being a content creator and that kind of stuff. The subject could be anything else for another person who has autism, but there's always like one interest for an autistic person that they're very obsessed with. Let's start with the downside first. Because I'm so interested in art and my own business, it is very hard to work for something I'm not interested in. It can give a lot of stress and even depression to do something I'm not comfortable with, or to do something I know I'm not very good at. This makes looking for a job very difficult, but I always look for a job ahead of time so that I'm sure I find something I like. Planning is very important so that you have structure in your life. A second thing that can be a downside but also an advantage: if I work together with a lot of other people, I want everything to be structured and I want to be sure I know what to do. Most of the time I want to take care of, for example, the whole design or all the illustrations, and splitting up those tasks can sometimes be hard. But at the same time I know I'm good at design and illustration and I will work very independent, which is also an advantage. A very good advantage is that I've never had an art block before. I don't work full-time as an illustrator, but I'm always motivated and I always get new ideas. It also isn't hard to try new styles and experiment. That's because when you're autistic, you're very passionate about your hobbies. Not that you have to be autistic to have this advantage, but I've noticed even paperwork for my business doesn't work. It almost feels like a hobby. I always daydream about what I can do next. I almost never pay attention when I'm somewhere outside, for example. I guess because it is information that isn't interesting to me. So instead of that, I just think about what my next project could be. This leads to something very funny. I always look at the ground when I'm walking, and if someone knows me and comes up to me, it takes me a long time to acknowledge that that person is someone I know, and I always think it's a stranger approaching me, so people always laugh with me when that occurs. When I work from 9 to 5, I come home and I just want to continue to work at my personal projects because it's so much fun to me. I, for example, almost never watch series or television because I want to do something useful. Okay, I do watch studio vlogs and art related videos all the time, and I scroll a lot on Instagram though, but that's also kind of business related, right? I have a great eye for detail. When I got tested for autism, they also tested my visual memory, and I scored 99% from the first time. I have to rely on visual information and not verbal information, so that's probably why I like making art more than talking to people. But I just don't like small talk that much. So that's why I don't like talking to people. People with autism think in a very logical way. That's probably why I take risks most of the time, because I plan everything and it's hard to imagine something would go wrong. Unfortunately, the world isn't logical at all, and that can give a lot of stress. If things don't go as planned, it can be very hard to accept that. When I start a project, I'm super concentrated and no other thought comes to my mind. I suddenly forget what time it is, and if I work for a big project, I sometimes forget to eat, which isn't that great of course. I also want to finish everything before I go to bed. It is very hard to suddenly interrupt an action. So this was all the information I have about being an artist with Asperger. Now comes the rather dramatic part of the video, my mental health issues. So it all probably started about 5 years ago when I had a very bad physical illness. I have always had a phobia of vomit, and at that time my food was stuck in my stomach, so I had the feeling of needing to vomit all the time. This was when my panic disorder started. I used to be in a constant state of panic and I felt like I was going crazy. Nobody understood what was going on with me, and I didn't understand it myself. When going to college, I had some issues as well. I used to have sudden panic attacks during class and stomach aches, probably because I was breathing in the wrong way, or I don't know. I talked about it with my teachers. Side note, it's always important to inform as much people as possible about what's going on. You don't need to tell all the details, but if you're really struggling, then please tell, for example, your parents and your teachers. So this lasted for a few years, but I didn't question anything as I became quite used to it. Then when I met Evert, everything felt good, but after a few months I started having extreme stress. Probably also because of school, new situations, busy days, stuff like that. This again was paired with a lot of stomach aches. It became so bad that I couldn't stay in the car while someone was driving because I had so much fear to vomit. I had a weird relationship with Evert and even my parents. I really acted like I wasn't myself anymore. Everything was everyone else's fault. I even ditched a very good friend of mine because I just couldn't maintain our friendship anymore. Everything was becoming too much. So I started meditating and writing in a journal. This kind of helped, but it didn't resolve anything. By that time I was also looking for help. I couldn't eat very well at that point because I was just under so much stress. We had to visit a doctor specialized in anorexia, and she told me I couldn't be vegan anymore. She was so mean, because some people with anorexia use veganism as a way to eat less, but that wasn't the case for me at all. We were all very desperate and my parents could see me like fading away or something. I started some new medication, but the really bad thing about this medication was that at first it gave me very bad stomach aches, and stomach aches are the trigger for my panic attacks. At one point I was alone at my student house and I had another panic attack. I took some pills to calm down, but it was so bad, and I'm very careful when it comes to pills, so I didn't take too much. I hadn't eaten all day, so I started puking air yet again. I just couldn't stop and I felt so miserable. I decided to call my parents, but I couldn't talk because my panic attack was so bad, so I texted them to come get me and drive me to the ER. From there on, everything started to improve because I started taking decent medication and I stayed at the hospital for 3 weeks. Normally, I'm not the one to recommend medication, but in my case, there just wasn't any other option. I couldn't live like that anymore, and I'm so happy about how my life turned around. During my stay at the hospital, I created brain fog, and it's just saved me. Now you can watch my achievements and goal video and compare it to the story from this video. Those stories only took place 1 year apart. I'm still amazed by how able to stick with me through that bad period. I just wasn't a good girlfriend because I just couldn't be there for him. I'm so proud of pushing through the worst period of my life because back then I just couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel at all. If I only knew how happy I'd get afterwards. By the way, I gained almost 20 kilograms and I almost never have stomach aches anymore because I don't have as much stress anymore. So I hope if you're in a bad situation yourself, you keep pushing through, because now I can be so proud of what I've achieved so far. I've completely changed and I know that it can be hard to get help, but never give up fighting because it's totally worth it. So, this was my talk about my autism and my mental health problems. I hope it helped you guys or informed you and defeated some stereotypes or something. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you next week with a somewhat less dramatic video, hopefully. Bye bye!